The Watchtower is dead in the water. Every founding member of the Justice League is standing in the same room, and every single one of them is being puppeted by an alien intelligence that has just spent the last 4 billion years getting smarter than everybody in it combined. Superman isn't Superman anymore. Batman isn't Batman anymore. And the only person left standing between Brainiac and the deletion of planet Earth is a 15-year-old from a city that doesn't even exist on a real map, who got his powers from getting caught in a gang riot he didn't start. The lights on the Watchtower are running on emergency power. The Javelin Bay doors are sealed from the inside. Somewhere behind him, the 2 people he trusted most just 5 minutes ago are trying to kill him, and they don't even know they're doing it. This is not a training exercise. This is not a very special episode. This is the single highest stakes moment in the entire run of the show, and the hero standing in the middle of it isn't wearing a cape, doesn't have a cave, and wasn't even supposed to be here in the first place. His name is Virgil Hawkins. You know him as Static. And in that moment, he wasn't the sidekick, the guest star, or the kid who got called up for the episode. He was the last line of defense for the entire Justice League, Batman included. Today we're looking at how a show that almost didn't get to share a universe with Batman ended up proving something about him that nobody wanted to admit at the time, and how 20 years later, Hollywood still hasn't fully caught up to it. Rewind to the beginning, not of Static's story, of the argument.
Static Shock premiered on Kids WB in 2000, based on a character created in 1993 by Dwayne McDuffie, Denise Cowan, Michael Davis, and Derek Dingle from Milestone Comics, an independent publisher built specifically because mainstream comics weren't making room for characters who looked like them. Milestone folded as a company within a few years, but when Warner Brothers adapted Static into his own animated series, he wasn't written into the same shared universe as Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, and Batman Beyond. He existed on his own island. According to the people who made the show, that wasn't an accident. The production team felt they hadn't built out enough of Static's own continuity yet to safely fold him into a universe that already had a decade of built-in canon behind it. Translation: the new kid from Dakota hadn't earned a seat at the table yet, not officially, not on paper. That changed in season 2, when Kids WB specifically requested a Batman crossover. The episode was called The Big Leagues. It premiered January 26, 2002, and the premise alone tells you everything about how the industry viewed this matchup. The Joker skips town after his old gang gets locked up by Batman and Robin, and starts recruiting Dakota's own homegrown metahumans, Static's Rogues Gallery, into a new crew, which means Batman and Robin follow him straight into Static's city. According to the show's own official synopsis, the episode isn't really about stopping the Joker. It's about Static having to put his hero worship in check. Not team up as an equal, put his hero worship in check. That's the framing the show itself chose for their first ever meeting. The assumption baked into the premise was that Static was the fan, and Batman was the guy he wasn't sure he could stand next to.
Here's the thing almost nobody said out loud back in 2002, because saying it would have sounded insane. This show believed from the jump that Batman's whole model was incomplete. Not wrong, incomplete. Batman built his legacy handpicking, training, and controlling every single person who ever wore a cape next to him. Robin, Batgirl, Nightwing, all of them recruited, all of them shaped by his hand, all of them accountable to his rules. Static Shock's entire existence was the counter-argument. Here's a hero Batman didn't scout, didn't train, didn't build from a bloodline or a fortune or a decade of martial arts monasteries. A kid who got his powers by accident in a chemical gas cloud during a gang fight he was trying to stay out of, and figured out the rest by himself with his best friend, using duct tape and a garbage can lid before he ever had a real costume. If a hero like that could stand next to Batman and hold his own, it meant the entire premise of who deserves to be in that world was wrong. Nobody at the network was saying that quote out loud in 2002, but it's exactly what the show was arguing every single time it put Static in a room with Gotham's finest. And for a while, nobody outside the show's own fan base took that argument seriously. Static Shock is still, to this day, remembered by a huge chunk of the culture as the good kid show, the one that got quietly praised for representation and quietly ignored for everything else. It never got a Batman-sized budget. It never got a Batman-sized marketing push. It ran exactly 4 seasons, 52 episodes, episodes total, from 2000 to 2004, opposite shows with a decade of brand recognition already built in. When it crossed over with the DC Animated Universe's flagship characters, plenty of longtime Bat fans treated it exactly like the framing of The Big Leagues suggested, a kid getting a guest pass into the real heroes club, not a hero who belonged there on his own merit. And here's the part that makes the doubt even harder to justify in hindsight. The numbers never actually supported it. Static Shock debuted as the highest rated preteen show on television, and the third highest rated show on the entire Kids WB lineup. By its third season, it was the second most watched Saturday morning program among boys 6 to 11. Its final season was beaten by exactly one show on the planet, Pokemon. This wasn't a show limping along on goodwill. It was outperforming almost everything else built for that age group, including shows with far bigger marketing budgets behind them. And it still got canceled in 2004. Not because kids stopped watching, but because, according to co-creator Dwayne McDuffie himself, the toy line didn't sell well enough. The ratings said Static belonged. The industry looked at a spreadsheet of action figure sales and decided that wasn't the kind of right that mattered. Sound familiar? So the show had to prove it, episode by episode. The Big Leagues was the first test, and it worked well enough that it changed the DNA of the entire series. Producer Alan Burnett later said the episode went darker than we usually went, with more night scenes, and that after it aired, the whole creative team decided to push the show in that direction going forward. Meeting Batman's world didn't just prove Static belonged in it, it permanently raised the standard for his own show. The second test came in hard as nails, when Static tracked a fellow Bang Baby to Gotham and crossed paths with Batman again. This time, close enough that they learned each other's secret identities. That's not a filler crossover. That's the kind of trust Batman doesn't extend to people he considers beneath his circle. Then came Future Shock, where Static got shunted decades into the future during a fight with a time-manipulating villain and landed directly in the world of Batman Beyond. And the elderly Bruce Wayne wasn't surprised to see him. He was expecting him. A future version of the most paranoid, hardest to earn trust in the entire DC universe had already built Static into his understanding of how the timeline worked. That's not a guest star being tolerated. That's a hero who'd become a fixture. But the moment that actually settled the argument, the one this whole video opened on, was the two-part finale-level crossover called A League of Their Own. Static and his best friend Richie, as Gear, get called up to the Watchtower to literally recharge the Justice League's power systems after a cosmic storm knocks them offline. It's supposed to be a glorified errand. Then, Brainiac breaks containment, takes over Gear's mind, and through him, seizes control of the entire Justice League. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, all of them, weaponized against Earth by an alien supercomputer, which leaves exactly one person on that station who isn't compromised. Not a founding member, not a legacy hero, the kid who got called up for the summer job. Static didn't just survive that fight, he beat it. He outthought a piece of alien technology that had already digitally conquered Superman, Batman, and the rest of the League's founding roster, using nothing but the same improvised, reactive, street-smart instincts that got him through Dakota with a garbage can lid for a shield. That's not a kid being saved by his heroes, that's the kid saving them. And this is where the receipts stop being about one show and start being about the actual architecture of the DC animated universe. Justice League Unlimited, widely considered the DCAU's most continuity-heavy, most critically respected series, the one that ties the entire shared universe together, is explicitly built, according to its own production history, on the events of Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, and Static Shock. Not and other shows, those four, named as the pillars. Dwayne McDuffie, Static's own co-creator, went on to write and produce for Justice League Unlimited itself, carrying the exact same argument from Dakota straight into the franchise's biggest stage. The kid who wasn't originally allowed to share continuity with Batman became foundational to the show that defined what that shared continuity even was. It wasn't just internal recognition either. The Big Leagues earned director Dave Kleistek a nomination for Outstanding Achievement in Directing at the 2002 Annie Awards, animation's answer to the Oscars, the same year the show sent Static into the ring with Batman for the first time. A year later, McDuffie and Alan Burnett won a Humanitas Prize for the episode Jimmy, which tackled gun violence head-on in a way most kids' programming wouldn't touch. The series picked up Daytime Emmy nominations in both 2003 and 2004, and won one outright for its music direction. None of that happened because a show was being politely tolerated next to Batman. That's a show being judged by the same industry standards as everything else on the air and clearing them. Then, the timeline itself closed the loop. In January 2005, months after Static Shock ended, an older version of Virgil Hawkins showed up in Justice League Unlimited's The Once and Future Thing, not as a nostalgia cameo, but as a character folded permanently into the DCAU's official ongoing future. A show that wasn't originally allowed to share continuity with Batman had, by the end, written its own hero into the timeline of the franchise's flagship series, without anyone needing to ask permission again. So back to the Watchtower. Brainiac is defeated, the League snaps out of it, and whatever conversation happens next, whatever look Batman gives the 15-year-old who just did what none of the real heroes could do while they were compromised, the argument is over. Static didn't need to be built by Batman to stand next to him. He needed to be tested by him, and he passed every single time the show put him in the room. That was always the read. It just took the Justice League losing their own minds to prove it on the record. Here's the part that makes this genuinely funny in hindsight though, because Static Shock wasn't just a very special episode show. It had jokes, and a lot of them landed specifically because Static himself was a wisecracker in a universe of brooding capes. Static talking trash mid-fight, cracking jokes about Batman's utility belt, getting starstruck and immediately embarrassed about being starstruck, that contrast was the point. Dwayne McDuffie once described the character as basically what he wanted as a comic reading kid, a black Spider-Man, quick-witted, funny, allowed to be a teenager even while doing hero work at a Justice League level.
Batman doesn't crack jokes mid-crisis. Static does, constantly, and the show never once suggested that made him less capable of standing in Batman's world. If anything, it argued the opposite, that heroism didn't require Bruce Wayne's specific brand of trauma-fueled discipline to be real. Which brings us to now, because the nobody listened part of this story didn't end in 2004. In 2020, DC and Warner Brothers finally moved to give Static the feature treatment Batman had had for decades, with Michael B. Jordan attaching as producer through his Outlier Society banner. Jordan didn't frame it as a nostalgia play. He called it building a new universe centered around black superheroes, saying flatly that our community deserves that. Milestone Media relaunched properly in February 2021, with Reggie Hudlin and Dennis Cowan at the center of it, writer Randy McKinnon attached to the Static Shock script, and DC even announcing a companion animated Milestone film featuring Static alongside Icon, Rocket, and Hardware. For a minute, it looked like the receipts had finally caught up to the argument the show made 20 years earlier. Then it stalled hard. A lawsuit from Dwayne McDuffie's widow, Charlotte Fullerton, over the Milestone relaunch not including his estate, tied the property up in exactly the kind of legal knot that doesn't care how good your pitch is. In 2025, when DC Studios co-head James Gunn was asked directly about the Static Shock movie's status, his answer was blunt: no updates, and a whole bunch of complexities behind that character right now. 23 years after the big leagues made Static prove he belonged next to Batman, and the character who once single-handedly saved the entire Justice League from a hostile alien takeover still can't get a straight answer on when he's allowed back on screen. So here's where this actually lands. Static Shock was right about Batman. Right that a hero doesn't need Bruce Wayne's fortune, bloodline, or hand-picked training to belong in his world. Right that character and instinct can outperform legacy and pedigree when it actually matters. Right enough that the DCAU itself built its most important series on the back of that argument. The receipts are all there. The pillar status in Justice League Unlimited's own canon, the co-creator who got promoted straight into the franchise
franchise's flagship writer's room, the night Brainiac took the whole league offline and the only person left standing was the kid nobody thought needed to be there. But being right on the page and getting paid off in the real world have never been the same fight. Batman got a blank check and 8 decades of adaptations. Static got 4 seasons, a canceled movie deal, and a producer's statement that the complexities are still being worked out. Think about what that actually means. A show that had to fight for the right to even share a universe with Batman ended up supplying one of the 4 pillars that universe was officially built on. A character the network once treated as a guest star ended up being the one person left standing when the real heroes went down, and a creative team that got told to keep their continuity small and contained ended up sending their own hero into the DCAU's future timeline anyway, on their own terms, with nobody's permission required. Every single doubt the industry had about whether Static belonged in that world got answered inside the show itself. The only thing that never got resolved is what happens after the credits roll. The show won the argument a long time ago. Hollywood's still deciding whether it's going to admit it. Drop it in the comments. If the Static Shock movie ever actually happens, where does he rank among the heroes who deserved the spotlight sooner? Hit like, subscribe, and check out one of the videos on your screen right now.